Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Star Trek First Contact by J.M. Dillard, the novelization of the movie, which the movie script was written, the story was written by Rick Berman, Brannon Braga, and Ronald D. Moore, with a screenplay by Brannon Braga and Ronald D. Moore. This is not the first Star Trek novelization I've read. I have read several of the others. I've read the motion picture novelization by Gene Roddenberry himself, which was mixed. There were some great elements and some not so great elements. I also read the Wrath of Khan novelization, which, to be honest, didn't add much to the movie. They added tidbits, but didn't add much. I also read the amazing, stupendous Search for Spock novelization by Vonda McIntyre. By the way, the Wrath of Khan was also Vonda McIntyre. This one is stupendous. It is phenomenal. Terrific example of how to write a novelization. Then I read the mediocre The Final Frontier novelization by J.M. Dillard, her first novelization. And then I read The Undiscovered Country, which is not only one of the best Star Trek movies, it is one of the best Star Trek novelizations. Stupendous. Truly fantastic stuff. And then a movie that I don't particularly love, Star Trek Generations. I read this novelization and it nearly moved me to tears because J.M. Dillard added so much for the original cast that I just loved it. So I generally enjoy getting to read the novelizations to see what they can add for the emotion of the characters. And so I was looking forward to reading the First Contact novelization. And so far, looking at the three Dillard ones that I've read, Final Frontier wasn't great. I thought it was okay. But I thought that Undiscovered Country and Generations were amazing, top tier. So I thought, man, she's got a good track record. So I was really looking forward to what she'd do with First Contact. And it is, I don't know, for some of you people who aren't as OCD, it is bugging me that I have a hardcover of this one, but mass markets of the rest. But it's what you got to live with when you're just going to the local bookstore. Anyway, so I picked up the First Contact novelization. It's not too long. It's about 246 pages of the actual novelization. And then there's a bonus behind-the-scenes little thing at the end that's about 30 pages long. So it's a pretty short novelization, but I guess if you put it in mass market format, it would probably be close to the length of all the others, which is like the 250 to 300 range, which is like the sweet spot for Star Trek novelizations, and a lot of movie novelizations for that matter. And unfortunately, this is a dud of a novelization, and it's so sad for me to say that because this is quite a good movie. I mean, First Contact, I think, is arguably the best of the next-gen movies, and I would even say I don't think there's many people who disagree with that. I think Generations is an okay movie, and I think that Insurrection and Nemesis are not good. But First Contact is a good movie. I don't think it's on the level of the top TOS movies. It's not a Wrath of Khan. It's not a Search for Spock. It's not a Voyage Home or a Undiscovered Country. It's none of those. But it's a good movie, and it's enjoyable. And so I thought, maybe she'll add some insights. And there are slight little bits of insight, but not enough. Usually a novelization will flesh out backstory for characters, or it will flesh out scenes themselves more, or it will add some scenes at the beginning or end to give context to the movie that the movie just couldn't do. This doesn't do much of that. The only thing this really adds is a little bit of backstory for Zefram Cochrane, who has other Star Trek novels, so they didn't do too much with him. And then also some backstory with Lily. With Zefram, it's more that you're getting context of what he's thinking during the movie. During the movie, you see Zefram as he's kind of freaked out by, hey, these people are lauding me as the person who saves the universe and does all this stuff. And you see him freak out. You see a lot more of that in the book. You see him processing that thought. And then for Lily, you see a couple of scenes of her history, her time during before World War III, during World War III, and then when she met Zefram. You see a little bit of that. But when I say a little bit, I mean that what I just described for her, you get maybe 10 or 12 pages, if that. It's probably closer to 7 or 8. Really, it's not that much. This is truly a paint-by-numbers retelling of the movie. And one of my friends online who has also read this book said that it read basically like a middle grade a novelization, and I own a few middle grade novelizations. I've never read them before of the Star Wars movies, but from what I understand, middle grade novelizations are just straight retellings, like script to page. You're not really adding that much. It's just getting the story out there for younger readers to read. And this one, if you had told me this was a middle grade novelization, I absolutely would have believed you. There's some language, so maybe it shouldn't be. But if you had told me it was a middle grade novelization, I could have believed you because it adds so little to the story. And I think that truly, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is the 7th novelization I've read. The only one I haven't read yet is The Voyage Home. Need to get that novelization. I can't find it anywhere. Might put that down as a Christmas gift. But of the 7 novelizations I've read, this by far adds the least context and behind the scenes, not behind the scenes like, making the movie, but like in the story, it adds the least to the story. And so that's just super disappointing. And the movie itself, and then so the book just flew by. I read this in a matter of like 2.5 hours. Like I just was able to just knock it out because there wasn't much depth to it. It felt like I'm just reading the movie. And while that can be fun, I wanted to have more juice. Here's just off the top of my head, a few things that they could have done. One, I would have loved to have seen a sequence at the beginning with the Borg Queen, or just the Borg, making the conscious decision, we're going after Sector 001. Instead, you just see like the thing from the movie, which is the vision that Jean-Luc has of the Borg, and then he wakes up with another vision, and then he gets a call from Starfleet, oh yes, I know, the Borg are coming. And like that's it. Instead, I want to see something from the Borg perspective on why they chose this moment to attack. I'd also like to see maybe a little bit of what Earth was like under that alternate Borg creation. Like what would have been, like if they had spent a chapter or maybe a portion of a chapter describing the Borg Earth when the Borg were successful, and you have like maybe someone calls in and says, hey, can you hear me? And I had like done that a little bit. In fact, if you read the post-Nemesis books, you know that this concept is explored in the Coda trilogy, just a tad bit in the Coda trilogy, but it would have been nice to have that type of thing explored here. I think it also would have been really interesting to see when they go back in time to stop the Borg, see something from the Borg vessel's perspective. Instead, you really just don't get any of that, and you just get the straight retelling of the movie, which is just, as I said, nobody signed on for that. Again, if this is a middle grade novelization, that's what you signed up for. This is not a middle grade. This is an adult novelization. It's supposed to add much. Just think about Generations. Now maybe it's because there were more deleted scenes in Generations that never got used. But there are certainly scenes in this book that I've never heard talked about from the actors or from anything else that totally recontextualize the movie. I'm going to have to spoil these movies a little bit because you're talking about Star Trek novelizations based off Star Trek movies, so you've been warned. Kirk dies both at the beginning and the end of this movie and in the beginning and the end of the book. I felt nothing in the movie when I first watched it. The book made me cry and made me think about his death and made me not just feel bad for Kirk, made me feel bad for all of his friends. And the novelization made me feel for him. This novelization from The Undiscovered Country made me really feel for Kirk's family, for Carol Marcus, and made me really feel stressed about the universe. This book did not add that emotional weight, and it did not do what it needed to do. I think that J.M. Dillard tried to add context for Jean-Luc, but she doesn't. Really what she adds is stuff we can tell in the movie. Patrick Stewart is a terrific facial actor, and so we get a lot of the emotion in the movie that isn't explicitly there in the movie, but you can kind of figure it out by looking at his facial features. And so she tries to put that in the book, but it's like, this is not a surprise to us. You're not really adding in all that much more. Maybe if we'd gotten more memories of Picard's time as Locutus, we just don't get that much more. Instead, as I keep harping on this, it's just a beat-for-beat retelling. And I cannot tell you how boring those are, especially if you're looking for something new. And so in just about every way, this book, I think, fails. And it's very disappointing. Again, I'm not hating on Dillard. I've read other books of hers. Generations and Undiscovered Country are two of the best Star Trek novelizations out there. So she can do the work. She can do a great job. But just for some reason, it feels like she phoned it in here. And that's really disappointing to me. There is about a 30-page excerpt at the end that talks about the making of the movie, in a similar way that there's an excerpt at the end of Generations that tells the making of this movie. This one I thought was much more interesting because there were all these problems with Generations. They had to rewrite the end of the movie. They had to work within very constrained budgets. So the creative process was much more interesting here. The creative process for First Contact is much more of a, we did it, easy. We got it all done. It's not that riveting. I didn't need to read 30 pages of that. Anyway, I've ranted a lot. I don't rant a lot on my channel. If you're a regular follower, you know this, but for the people who don't regularly follow, I'm generally posting positive reviews. I would say close to 95% of, maybe even 97% of all the books I read, I enjoy. I really do enjoy reading books, and I really want to read books that I will enjoy. But when you have books that frustrate me, that do this, it makes me more angry, especially when I know the author can do better and when I know the publisher can do better. Pocketbooks, you were the editors on this one. Your job was to not fall asleep at the editorial wheel. You didn't do your job here. So anyway, maybe they thought that adding too much context would affect other tie-in material or hamper them for other movies, but I don't think they would have. I think they could have done a ton more that wouldn't have been hampered at all. So that is my review of First Contact. I would give it a 3 out of 10, maybe. It's if you really are a novelization fan or you really want to have all of them, then get it. But if you're like, I don't read many novelizations for Star Trek, which one should I read? Not this one. Not this one. So unfortunately, a 3 out of 10. It's very sad. So if you've read First Contact, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you love this? If this is your favorite novelization for Star Trek, please let me know. I would love to have the conversation and learn why you love it so much. And again, as I said, I like the movie. It's a good movie, but you have to add more in the novelization. So until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.